I would have enjoyed this one.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm so psyched to see everybody here tonight. We have a great turnout. My name's Steve Johnson. I'm the town engineer here in Yarmouth, and I welcome you all to the Madeleine Point meeting that we've hosted tonight. We're pretty psyched about this project, and so I have a few folks here in the room that will be presenting to everyone tonight. And just so everybody knows, we're been working on the project. The Harbor and Waterfront Commission has been working on this project for a little while, and so they've come up with a concept plan of what we think is out there. And Steve, what? Oh boy, the mic. I thought I was loud enough. So we've been working for a little while, and so we have some drawings that we think are a starting place. And so the goal of this meeting is to have folks take a look at a presentation that we'll be presenting, and then offer up response and input. We have some drawings over here that we can come over and sketch, and this information will help us continue on with the design process on this project. So before we get too far along, again, we have Barney Baker from GEI. He is the lead designer of this project. Over here we have Will Owen, who's our harbor master. I'm sure everybody knows Will. In the back of the room I see Erin Zwerko. She's our planning director. And I see a couple of counselors in the room. Raise your hand. They're out here. I see you. There we go. And of course, we have Sean here that's directing me on doing things wrong. So anyway, again, I just want to take a chance to introduce Barney here, and he'll get going and give us a quick presentation. Okay, Sean? All right. Barney, it's all yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. For those people standing, there are still some seats down in the front here. And as Steve pointed out, I work for GEI Consultants. We're in Portland, a firm of engineers, scientists, and planners. And in 2006, I was in this same room presenting the same project. So I don't know how many of you were here back then. It was a slightly larger crowd, so I'm a little disappointed. But this is obviously a very popular project. I know it's very near and dear to the folks in Yarmouth. I used to be a resident of Yarmouth. I now live in Freeport. I think everybody's been to the site, but I'm going to start off by kind of reintroducing it. This is obviously the pier, looking from the water. And the agenda for tonight is introductions, and Steve has kind of taken care of that. The one partner that I would mention is Florida Power and Light, because they, through their generous offer to use some of their property, has made the facility much more efficient. And so I think they should probably get a plug in here. So the presentation, I'm really going to talk about the existing facilities and what I see are what recommendations I would make for the improvements. And then I think we'll have a lot of time for questions and comments after that. So everybody knows, hopefully everybody here knows, Cousins Island. One of the reasons this site is so popular, it's one of really, I guess, 3 or 4 pier sites in Yarmouth. There's obviously Town Landing, which is way up the river and takes quite a while to get out. There's one at the on Little John, and there's one at Cousins Island at Wharf Road, just across from Madeleine Point. And then there's various landings elsewhere, but those are really the only facilities that you can actually keep a boat at. And the big benefit of the one in town Yarmouth is that you can park there. Parking's very restricted at the others. Madeleine Point, somewhat better, more parking there. So it really is, it's got a lot of room out in the water, but it's somewhat challenged on shore space-wise. And why are we here? It's because it's such a popular site. And there's a waiting list for moorings. And we've actually changed the name. We used to call it Madeleine Point Town Landing. Now we're starting to call it Madeleine Point Multi-Use Landing, because there's so many people that use it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the existing site, some of the problems there, the erosion, no room to expand buffers or add parking, popularity of the site is crowding out some users. Pier and float system does not accommodate swimmers well. No one anticipated when we were putting this together that it was going to become, the Costa del Cousins Island. But it is very popular for swimmers. And the depth of water at the face dock is only 4 feet at low water. So that's something of a handicap. And for the mooring field, I think I'm right in saying this, Will, there's currently a 5-year waiting list to get into that mooring field. So this is the existing site as it stands now. And I think this is large enough. So it's really a postage stamp of a site. In fact, it's only about 0.2 acres. This little site right here. That's essentially the town property. When the pier was built, there was permission to build it off of Florida Power and Light's property. So that was great because it left the beach that's there intact that is so popular. And it also left what I call Contemplation Rock on the other side, which is very popular for people to go out and sit on. But the parking is really restricted. There's only room for 9 parking spaces on the property. And so those are allocated towards, I'm going to actually squint so I can see. On the existing parking, the waterfront, there's actually only 8 spaces. And some of those are allocated to fishermen. One of them is an ADA handicap space, and the others are kind of on a first come, first serve. So where else do people park? Well, they have to go back up the road, and there's some creative parking up on the road. So that the total number, according to my count, is 43 spaces. And who's using those spaces? Well, it's kind of where we came. So this is your pier. This is back, I think, in 2010. There's a nice ensign right there. You can see the dinghies right here. This is, looks like this is back when there were only 2 shared dinghies. There's now 5. And you can see how this has gone forward. This is, again, this is a few years later at low tide. You can see the gangway is quite steep. It's 40 feet long, but the pier is quite high. And the gangways are short and can be quite slippery at low water. There's only so much room on the face dock to land a boat, and these dinghies here are the shared dinghies. This is this photo hasn't been enhanced. This is in the early days when the vegetation was doing quite well, and the approach to the pier with these granite blocks kind of worked out well. Again, this is close to when it was completed in, I think, 2006. You'll note that the embankment is in pretty good shape there. It's experiencing some erosion now. And what we had done then, and it's still there, but not doing that well, is we put in sort of grass pavers. The idea was to create a buffer between the parking area and the water. Here are the stairs that go down to the beach. Mike Darling came up with this, very ingenious. This is the dinghy launch, and so folks can pull their dinghies out and put them in the water using this kind of facility right here. And this, of course, is the dinghy rack, which has kayaks on it and a number of things. So we've put more racks down there as part of the new plan because we have some additional space. This is the gravel parking area. It's actually on quite a steep slope, and you can see here I'm not sure when this picture was taken, probably about 2015, 16. You can see that there's some wash here. And so what happens, particularly in the winter, is that this area gets quite kind of icy, and there's a lot of stormwater runoff. The ledge is actually very close to the surface, and so it's very very flashy. A lot of water comes off that very quickly. So the grass pavers that we put in back then didn't quite do the job. So here we are, 2023. So who's using the facility? So we've got the obvious users. We've got some fishermen out there, and to be correct, fisherwomen. We've got recreational boaters. We've got paddlecraft users. We've got beachgoers and swimmers. And I've put this line in here: town residents, guests, dog walkers. A lot of people in the neighborhood, I think, use it. And I suspect a lot of you here are in the neighborhood. And the reason I kind of emphasize town residents is there's no federal state money that's been put into this property. So it really is a Yarmouth facility. And there is some interest in keeping some of a portion of the floats in all year round so that it can be used by some of the aquaculture businesses that are developing in Casco Bay. Because they're obviously working out there in the winter, as are some of the fishermen. But the floats traditionally are taken out and taken out of the water. So site access from April to November, that's really the season. Good access for recreational boaters. I know everybody here that's got a boat, it's in the water by now, right? Probably not. Everybody's running late because of the weather. The swimmers are down there. I think they're probably more popular in August than it is in May and June because the water's warmer. And then the commercial fisher people are obviously using it during the summer. And then I think there's a lot of people, and we'll kind of take a poll later we're interested on who uses the site and how it's used, because it's not just about boaters. That's why I'm calling it a multi-use site, because there are so many other users that use it. From November to April, obviously the pier is restricted because the floats aren't in the water, and also the weather's typically not as good, but still quite protected. So I would say there's a reduced commercial use. I think there are still some diehards that take a dinghy off the beach and use the facility. And then, of course, all the folks who go down there for kind of mental health and enjoyment can use it all year round. So how do people get there? Because this is very important. Car or truck. If they go by car or truck, we need to provide a parking space for them. If they go on foot or bicycle, there is a bike rack down there, and certainly bike racks don't take much space, so if there's ever a shortage of bike racks, that's easily rectified. And then people obviously walk there from neighborhood houses. I don't think too many people come by boat. It's not really a destination as I understand it, but maybe there are folks here that would tell us that it is. So what is the design criteria? This is where we start to plug what it is needed into kind of physical infrastructure improvements. So we look at the seasonal and year-round pier and float requirements. Obviously, as the mooring field gets bigger, then you need additional dock space to handle more than one boat landing at a time, and also you need additional space to conveniently handle dinghies also. And just so that it's safer for people and they're not lining up and waiting to come in, more convenient. So dinghy capacity and float capacity is important. But what drives it all is parking capacity. You can't just sort of expand the facility down there without looking at parking, because I don't know how many people, currently go down to the site and maybe just turn around and leave because there's no parking. And then the other, another criteria is ADA requirements. So I mentioned the steep gangway. That's obviously a deterrent for, some people who are physically impaired. So one of the goals here is to put in an accessible gangway. And the other real kind of impediment to development is land area, and you just don't have much down there. It's a real postage stamp of a site. But through some creative negotiating with Florida Power and Light, that's been remedied. The current site, well, I'll talk about. So I'll go back to this plan, which is where I just was. This site right here, this brown area, which is the waterfront of the site, that is about 0.2 acres. And then if we go to the proposed site, we're expanding that by almost 3.5 times by the addition of additional property, and I'll show you that in a minute. And also the other site plan that I'm going to throw up, it improves off-street parking, it expands the waterfront, it adds additional floats, it provides an ADA gangway, and also considers gear transfer for the fishermen. So right now the gangway is wide enough you can put a lobster trap down one side of it. That's still going to be there. And then the mooring field, I haven't really touched the mooring field, but obviously, and Will's got a great philosophy. Will's not going to expand the mooring field until he knows that there's sufficient parking down there. And part of that is, who are all these other users and how is the site being used? So what are we doing to expand the site? Well, the lot next door where that building was that was knocked down, it's this site right here. It's the one directly to the west of the property. It looks right out onto the pier. So the building was taken down there, and that site is going to be available for use for the new facility. And I can talk about that development a little bit. The other piece is right on the corner as you come down. There's a property that's about 0.4 acres that Florida Power and Light has offered up as a kind of a dedicated off-site parking area. So that handles the waterfront and the parking improvements that we're proposing. And then we're also got some pier. I mean, we're adding some additional floats, or that's what we're recommending. And again, as Steve pointed out, we're just looking for input at this point. It's not obviously not a done deal. But just to give you a kind of a precursor, we would be increasing the parking from 43 spaces to about 85. So we'd be almost doubling the parking, and we'd be adding additional. So well, we can go through it in a minute. Hold on just a second. And then, so again, looking at all the different users, we're kind of allocating floats to different user groups. To go through the recommended improvements, I've got the big drawings up there that you can look at, and I have the plans in front of me. So Unfortunately, I don't have them to show on the screen. That probably would have been a good move for me to do. But what we're proposing is expanding the vessel berthing and the dinghy space requirements or opportunities. Improve ADA access by putting in, let me just back up to my plan. I can sort of increase. So what we're doing on the floats is these interior floats are the white floats that you see here. Can you see that okay? Let's see, I've gone off my pointer. There. I guess when you blow it up, you lose the pointer. But so this is the footprint of the existing floats. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing the floats further out and I'm adding another tier. So the inside floats would be for the swimmers. For some dinghy overflow. And then the outside floats would be for the landing. And what that effectively does is move the depth from 4 feet at mean low water to about 10 feet at mean low water. So you'd be able to come in at all states of tide to that float, even if you had a sailboat. And then the area in between would be dinghies. And then the area vertically or perpendicular to shore would be another landing place. So you'd go from having about 40 feet of landing space to having a total of 134 feet. So it's a larger facility. It's all floats. We're not increasing the size of the pier. It's all coming off the pier. And by extending offshore, you get to put an ADA gangway in, which is quite a bit longer than the one you've got now.
Can you point out where the dinghies are again?
Where the what are?
Dinghies are in this drawing?
Yes, I've got a much better drawing here. Let me see if I can grab that. Okay, so so these are the existing floats here. And your gangway goes down to that
There we go.
space.
No, all right, we're not quite there yet.
So is that the other one or is that the first one?
That's the first one. Still the first one.
Okay, so so this gangway right here is required for a recreational facility. It wasn't required back in 2006 when the system was originally designed, but now ADA guidelines require a longer gangway, and so we put them in all over Maine. We've got one in Cumberland. If anybody's been to the Cumberland facility, there's one there. But the advantage is that it gets you further out into deep water with the same length of pier. And so then we're adding to the system by putting in inboard floats dedicated to swimmers, and then outboard floats that are dedicated to people coming in from the mooring field.
Okay.
And so
Make a quick switch here, folks. We're going to try something new. I know. Oh no, we're rolling the dice here. There we go.
So we'll move down
Okay.
to
Okay, that's the, right. So this is the same drawing, but obviously blown up in more detail. So here's our existing pier coming out from the land. Here's the existing float system that is going to go away. Actually, we're going to reuse those floats and put them out if you take these recommendations. We're going to put a much longer gangway in. This gangway is actually 80 feet long. It's twice as long as the one you've got now. And it's going to have a chute alongside it for the fishermen to get their traps out, just like they do now. In terms of landing big boats, you could land here, parallel to or perpendicular to the shore. And obviously, if the wind is coming out of the north, this might be a preferable place to land. Or you could land out on the face dock. And theoretically, you could get one large boat or 2 smaller boats on the face dock. Then the area in between would be dedicated for dinghies. And these are your shared dinghies right here. I've got four here. You've actually got 5, so they'd have to fit back in here. But this interior space would be more protected and could be populated with dinghies. The swimming floats would be along here. So here's the beach here. Swimming floats are here. Put a very low freeboard float on the end so that you can actually get out of the water quite easily without a ladder. And so you could swim towards the beach. You could swim off these floats, or you could do what is popular. You could sunbathe on these right here. The beach would be largely unchanged in this plan. We'd be looking at improving the vegetation on the bank to prevent that from washing out. But the beach would be kept, just the way it is now. I think there would be less small boats migrating across the beach. That would still occur, but there's more space for dinghies out here, so there'd be less ashore. Yeah, sure.
What's keeping the swimmers from going out to the dock where the boats land?
So it would have to it'd have to be with signage and yeah. I mean,
And likewise, there's nothing to prevent a boat from coming on the swimmer's side. Right.
right.
Is that a human thing?
Right. Everybody, because this facility is so popular, one thing that will happen if you get more people down there is you can start to police yourselves. Yeah. Well, so it's interesting. Yes.
Just a quick question, because I think the elephant in the room with this is fantastic, and the facilities to improve and move forward. But the elephant in the room with this project, and boaters and swimmers are like oil and water, and you gotta keep them separate. And signage isn't going to do it, and having the mission statement on our website's not going to do it. I see a lot of these facilities in Europe. You've got, fenced in, with floats, a swimming area, and a
Yeah.
floating area. It's gotta be. You can't leave it up to public police and all that kind of stuff. It's not gonna end well. I'm just throwing it out there. You guys consider a separate pier off the easterly ledge that's like the swimmers pier and area, so that you have a commercial and a boating dock, and you have a swimming float ramp with an area where people can go in and swim, which would be fantastic.
So here, bring this plan up here. The one, yeah, that one. So I believe what the gentleman's talking about is this is the pier off this side. This promontory here is also on the site. And if you took a pier off there to go swimming, we did actually suggest that, 20 years ago. But this point was pretty sacred to some of the folks for just the pedestrian experience, going out and sitting on the rock.
But
Just to add to what he just said, I've had 3 phone calls 2 years ago. Sorry, I didn't post about it.
Yeah.
I don't know how I didn't kill this little lake. Bringing my boat in, jumping in. Can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the takeaway, and raise your hand if you think that's where we need to go, is you want to completely separate the boaters from the swimmers. Okay.
yeah, sure.
All right.
So, Martin, if I can jump in just for a quick.
Sure.
We did bring, the reason why this project came about is we brought this up. I'll just use the microphone so that Sean doesn't say anything. We brought this project not the project, we brought the issue of the swimmers and the boaters, the oil and water issue forward. And the council at the time did not want to restrict use or put any regulations in place at the time. They sent us back to the drawing board and said, build a facility that can handle all the uses. Now, with that facility can come rules. Right now, there's nothing to enforce there because there's no rules in place. There are signs, but those signs, unfortunately, don't have any teeth behind them. I can't go down there and tell someone they can't be there when there's no rule designated by the town council, by the town of Yarmouth, voted by the people to enforce. So part of this build out is also going to become the conversation of what do we want for rules? What part of the docks are going to be utilized for what purposes? So this is a concept to help deal with the uses. The second phase will be how do we regulate it? My position is in play to deal with that, but I don't have anything to operate from currently. Before, when you would ask somebody, please not to do something, they just didn't do it. But as the use has grown down there, that's just not happening anymore. People aren't voluntarily complying anymore. So it's going to take a facility to be built. It's going to take something by the people to be recommended, and we have rules in place that can be enforced. So just want to throw that out there. No.
So generally,
Rules in place and get it under control and then see what the facility would require as a build-out.
But by doing that, you're going to be, but by doing that, and what the council at the time, I'm not speaking for the council today, but the council at the time, their concern is that if you tell other people they can't use it, it's a public facility, they want everyone to have access in certain ways. So by building the facility that gives everyone their little piece of access, then you could compartmentalize and restrict certain areas. So that was correct. But if we tell individuals they can't use it, we went for that. So we went for that, and that was voted down.
Well.
So
so folks, again, we're here to answer questions for you. So let's get through the presentation if we could. I think we have a little bit more to do. I know we've got some sure takeaways from here. We got swimmers need to be addressed. We need to address maintenance and ensuring safety and, the rule issue. That's all part of it. And that's all part of is pulling it into this project as we move forward. So let's get through the presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity to take more input. And we are furiously writing all this down. I know Aaron in the back is taking great notes. I'm going to be taking notes as soon as I can get the technology working. And so let's just get through it. So Barn, if you wanted to continue work this.
We could, though, we talked about creative negotiating with Florida Power for the property. If part of your presentation could be to give a bit more detail
Sure.
on what that meant and what that means longer term, I think that would be helpful.
Perfect.
Sure, I can tell you what the areas are that are involved. I haven't been directly involved with the discussion, and maybe one of the staff members can add something to that. But the piece of property that's in question is the one that's next door to the existing site. So that goes right here. And what we're proposing for it is we're not expanding the parking into that area or anything. It's right on the shore. And its benefit really is as open space. So what we're proposing to put there is recreational, additional racks for the dinghies or the kayaks, and picnic tables, bike racks. But it's very low impact development. It's not intended to take all the trees down and pave it. What we are hoping to do is to improve this section of the parking lot, of the existing parking lot now. It's very steep. We're going to put a retaining wall in here and lower the grade and make these grades in here better to get the thing to drain a little less hysterically. We are actually proposing that this area be paved because to reduce the maintenance and just to improve the resiliency of the surface. And then we want to get back and reconstruct this area that we put grass pavers in before and make that more resilient and effective. Part of the problem is that all this gravel that's put in up here is actually washing down over the green pavers. And so it's killing the grass and killing the ability of it to function as as a filter and as a kind of a resiliency to hold that soil together. We're keeping the same stair down to the beach and also the runway for the dinghies. So this area really, we're proposing that it not change. We know folks, with the exception of the commentary that we heard suggesting that this might be a better place to locate the swimmers. Do other people use this area and feel strongly about it for different purposes? Because we've got several lobbies here. I'm sure you all use the site for something a little different.
If you're proposing a green space on the other side, then that could flip the use for the contemplation area. You could make some nice benches in the new lot. Just to the south.
This new lot here? Yeah, it would essentially be just paths put in it and a way to get to the dinghy racks, but it would. Okay, over on this side.
Now, on this side, the south side, you can improve,
Yes.
sit, contemplate, just like they do.
Sure. So what you're saying is this function, if it exists now here, could be relocated here, and the swimmers could go over there. Okay.
Is that part of your basis of design? Are you at that stage where you've been given all the pieces for this project, like cost, multi-use? Have you written that document yet?
We've developed a design basis. We haven't written a document for that. We feel we know the site pretty well, having been the original designers of it, and have watched it kind of mature over the years. So several of the pictures that I brought up were our old pictures that kind of show how it was originally intended to work.
So, Mark, just a little quick time check here. We're in 45 minutes in. If we can maybe wrap up.
Got one more slide.
Get folks
Yeah.
their input.
Okay. Will, if you could find that slide of the parking area. So this is the access road coming in to the site. Just to get your bearings, down here is where you cross the gully, right here. We are going to put a drainage culvert across there because that's needs some help. But this area right now is pretty much wooded, and this is entirely on Florida Power and Light property. It's a nice, well-drained upland site. And what we're proposing to do is to have traffic be able to drive in and drive out and maintain, areas that are still treed and planted. So, hopefully we obscure a lot of this parking area from the road. It's likely to be a gravel parking and just used during the summer, because that's when the site gets used the heaviest. We're proposing very few improvements, not looking at any, at least not yet, not looking at any lighting, not looking at to pave this, but just using it as a parking area.
How many do you have? How many parking spaces do you have?
I think I have to look at my notes again, but I think we have.
34.
Yeah.
34?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Barney, have you considered using the parking area at the end of Cousins Island Road and the Madeleine Point?
We have. The power plants said no.
They said no.
No, they want to hold on to that for their use.
Have you finished your presentation before we take questions?
I think, yes, I'm at a closing point. Yes, thank you. So, okay.
Can you pass them the mic if they're going to ask questions? Yeah. So, Barney, let me have that.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much, Barney. So what we'll do is we have a mic here because we're recording this for future reference and folks to view. So I'll pass the mic around. One little note here: this red button, please don't press the button. Right? Just hand it back to me because that'll shut everything off, and we'll all be very unhappy. But yes, let's take questions and we'll go from there. So I see a lady right here. I'll pass it to you.
Put the video of the entire site plan as we talk in the
proposed one. Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Jill. I live on Cousins. I appreciate your thought and stuff on this. I have a few questions around garbage, traffic, toilets, that this plan doesn't address, that no one goes into the parking lot first. Everyone goes down and sees if they can get a parking spot. And so there's a massive jam there. I would love to understand if a traffic study's been done. I would love to understand, Will, your thoughts on what would there be proposed mooring additions, or is this just actually capturing what needs to happen to make this site right now? Yeah, and I guess I would want to have somebody understand, like, how did we got here because we need to address some issues that have come up. But I'm just sort of wondering, like, how do we get into this process? Like, who started this? Thanks.
Let me answer that. Sure. So how this was started was a couple of years ago, the Harbor Waterfront Committee approached the council with a concern of the oil and water situation. And so a lot of safety concerns. And like I mentioned earlier, the council was concerned about shutting any single usage down and asked us to capture what all the uses are currently and how to make it work down there and come back with a concept. That's it. And that's what we've done.
What you've done is just not adding any moorings, not adding anything else, just right-sizing what exists.
So right-sizing what exists now, but there is a potential for expansion of moorings. I'm not going to say that there's not an opportunity there. But the goal behind this at the Harbor Waterfront Committee level was, if we build a facility, to let it sit for a period of time, see what our usage is, and then add moorings accordingly going forward. And there is a percentage of moorings to parking spaces that is recommended in the plan.
And
What do we currently have, or what? So we are sitting just under 100 moorings at Madeleine Point, but that does include some of the residential moorings in and around it, so people that live kind of.
And I just want to answer this lady's question. She had a couple questions, and we'll go to you, sir. So regarding the process, it was a great question. So again, this is a concept. We've just kind of started the process. We anticipate that this project will require more work to deal with the parking, the traffic, the bathrooms, all those key things that are going to be part of a planning board review process, because this project will have to go through a major site plan review. So there will be much more talk about it, much more input. All of those items are key points that are part of our zoning ordinances that will require the town to address as part of that planning process. But we want to hear it, and so I just want to make sure that we did capture your questions. I think this gentleman was next, and then I'll go out back here. I'm trying to keep it.
More or less, the consideration for like the residents that happen to live like right there with that parking lot you're speaking of, when you go right down there. And I know you mentioned that it gets the most usage during the summertime. I can vouch that it doesn't only get used in the summertime, throughout the wintertime up until like all hours of the night sometimes.
This is your parking space?
No, I'm talking up on the corner. Yep, right, the big one. Bingo, right there. No, other side. Right there, right. So the lights that will be there will be pointing right at our house all night long from where we live. We live right there.
On the other side of
On
the.
the other side?
Car headlights, not
Car headlights, right, exactly. And the amount of foot traffic will double, and the amount of lights will probably double, the amount of parking spots are now doubling or tripling currently there. Correct, like that way.
Ma'am?
But there seems to be no consideration that was put into, this process for like the residents right there with that, in mind. Just curious of like why.
So just to try to answer a piece of that, it is a public use facility. We're looking at the public access. We're looking at how to suit what is down there. As far as the neighborhoods go, this is the opportunity for neighborhoods to bring forward some of their concerns. Once again, back to the rules that can be put on, you can add, for instance, an 11 o'clock, facility closed down, or a 2 hour after sunset. You can put rules into place if a facility is built where we don't have those rules currently. So that's the other opportunity we have with this, is to look at all the impacts that maybe are currently happening and that could also happen with a build out, and what could we do to try to capture some of those concerns.
Why can't those rules be enforced now?
They're not in place.
Coming back with them. I remember I saw you.
if the
right, so we
townspeople would like that, yes.
So we have a question right here, so go ahead.
You keep talking about public use. Is this public, or is it just town resident? Will the parking be town resident?
That's a great
restricted?
question. So currently, all the parking down there is set up for resident parking only. There are a few people that have had moorings there that are grandfathered from prior to that happening that still have a mooring there, but all the moorings that are being issued there are to residents only, and all the parking is regulated to residents only currently.
We're gonna go ladies first, and then this gentleman. We have one out back here. Yep.
Speaking of the parking's like, I want people that need to be able to drive a car to get to the water. There are many, many people driving cars there that don't need to drive a car to get to the water. So it seems like the parking is pointing towards more moorings, getting that business going. And I just want to put my strong vote in for, if you're going to take it a step at a time, take it a step at a time. Don't do the parking. Don't increase parking first, and then just see what's going to happen. It's not needed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I saw you, and then maybe don't touch it. Nope. Okay. There we go. Okay.
Will, I'm trying to understand a little bit. We moved here in 2011, and we got a mooring at Madeleine Point, I think, in 2012. It was kind of a ghost town back then. It was really just boaters, and it's obviously morphed into boating, beach club, et cetera, et cetera. Just trying to understand, do you know the mix of use now and how that has developed in the last 5 or 10 years as a way to understand where the impacts are coming from?
I can try to speak to it. Yes. So originally it was boaters, and that's what the pier was built on. And pretty much was the boater use. We started to see a lot of kayaker and paddlecraft usage where other people come down and take stuff off their vehicles, or they're now storing them on the dinghy racks that are there. And then now we are seeing a lot of the younger generation utilizing the dock, for swimming or sunbathing. It's also a great place to watch the sunset, so a lot of people frequent there in the evenings. So the use has changed from solely a boater access site to many different uses, and with the kids in general, that usually brings multiple vehicles just due to it's a meetup spot. Or if people are meeting out there with kayaks, maybe they have, people's racks can only support one kayak at a time or two kayaks. It might be a whole family, so they have to bring multiple vehicles. So we are seeing an increase in parking down there. What we're also seeing, we have some people that maybe are taking their family out boating, or people are in town, so they're taking their family out. So there's more cars going down there than ever before. The recreational site has really boomed. We're seeing less commercial activity than we had in the past. There's still a presence, but it's not as frequented as it was when it was built. So I hope that answers your question.
We have a question back here. He's got the mic. We'll be coming around. We'll get there.
Good evening, Chris Cam. I am a mooring holder, and I have a passel of teenagers who spend a lot of time down there. I just want to comment. I think the plan is brilliant. I think it's simple. I think it preserves the site. It expands as we need. I think one of the things about Madeleine Point is that it's a gem that really doesn't exist maybe anywhere else in the state, and we've got it. And I think you guys are doing a real thoughtful process of trying to protect that and expand it. I think that people have a lot of great concerns here. I mean, some of the parking, some of the headlights. I wouldn't want headlights shining on my window either, but maybe there's a possibility to put up some fencing or some bushes. Traffic, I understand that. Maybe there's an ability to not have parking down there except for the commercial side of it, and just have a drop off and then you pull back up and park up top. So I think there's a lot of solutions here. I think the biggest problem that we've had as having both teenagers who swim there as well as a mooring holder is this problem of the swimmers getting in the way of the boaters. And in the past, there has not been an opportunity for people to swim there. So when I'm pulling in, if I'd say to the kids, hey guys, you can't swim here, you gotta get out of the way, there was nowhere really for them to go. And I think by providing this double dock that you have, we're giving them an opportunity and space to go. And maybe we improve upon that. So maybe instead of restrictions, we can do things like empowering. So put a ladder in there, something that's easier to get in and out of the water with. Maybe even have a line. I don't know if it's even feasible, but have a line with buoys on it, a float line that goes from the end of the swim dock over to the rock to try and fence off an area without having specific restrictions. And I think, Will, to your point, when you have a set of rules and you have a place for people to follow those rules, people will begin to follow those rules. Right now, we don't have a set of rules, but even if we had a set of rules, there's really no alternative. There's nowhere for those kids to go except for what's there right now. And I absolutely agree that safety has got to be a priority, because I too have almost run over people on my boat. And luckily I have a small enough boat where I can stop, back up, whatever. But I think you got a great plan and a great start of it. And I think the idea, the simplicity of this and keeping the site and not taking away the rock, not taking away a lot of other things, I think there's a lot of things that you could do with this base plan and maybe adjust it and tweak it to be able to accomplish or meet the objectives that we want. Thanks.
Thank you.
Coming forward.
So while Steve's doing that, can I just ask for a raise of hand as to who has moorings out there?
You didn't even get me.
All right, I didn't.
So this is not everybody that owns mooring down there. Just quite a few.
28.
28 present, I think, is what he's looking for. Steve, who has the mic?
Yes, right, this lady right here. She has the mic.
I'm Kelly Tillinghast. I'm on the board for the Cousins and Little John Island Association. And I just wanted to share some data, especially about traffic. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right. So, okay. So last fall at our annual meeting, we had a traffic study done, and it was a result of folks indicating their concern about a lot of speeding on the island, especially down Cousins Street. So we had a device installed around Seal Lane, and it was tracking incoming traffic for a week in September, the 6th to the 14th of September. And it counted 5,700 vehicles in that space of time. So anyway, just an FYI. It also said that there were some, I can't quite read my notes here, too close. But there were some, mostly people were obeying speed limit a little high, but the maximum speed was way over. You know, for the most part, you know, I think they said that the speed limit there drops to about 25. They were noticing people that were consistently over 30 hitting there, but the maximum speed was indeed much higher. And this data came from Chief Gallant. So, FYI.
Hi, I'm Paul LaJoy. I have a mooring there. Couple of comments that were made. One of them was limit the use of the lower to load and unload only. Because cars, the kids are going to park down there if there's any spots there. And if the kids are going down, I have no problem with them on the dock or being around. Limit their parking up the hill. They're young, they can walk. They want to use the facility. The people that have boats that are going in or kayaks, I get all that, but somehow look to have rules to limit that parking and make that work. And then the very simple one about hours, dusk to dawn, something like that. There's no need for people to be down there at night. Really isn't. You know, I think the town can make some rules on that. If a boat is coming in late at night, maybe that's going to happen, but it should not be a congregation of kids down there at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, swimming or doing whatever they are. Hey, if I was that age, I would do it too. I'd break the rules. But you know, we could make some rules around that and get that set.
Thank you. And to speak to your point on the parking, the harbor waterfront level, we had talked about making what is 2-hour and 15-minute spaces on the right side into a loading and unloading zone only, and then essentially where your hammerhead is to make it the hammerhead aside from commercial offloading. So that would try to eliminate those spaces as like daytime spaces and push the majority of the parking up the hill. And it has been talked about, and we've agreed at the harbor waterfront level that having some sort of closure of the facility, with the exception of boaters going in and out, trying to limit the use down there in the evening hours after sunset of some point has been a conversation. So thank you, yes.
So that would be me coming in late at night. Sorry, I run a commercial boat out of there. Just to throw this out, don't forget about your handicap parking. There's 2 or 3 on hot days that come down there and park, and there's a commercial fisherman that park, and you have 1 spot.
Right.
If you could keep that down by the water, I think that would be awesome.
Okay.
You missed that in your first. Yeah.
Thank you.
How often are the parking spots that are already there full?
So I don't.
Has anybody studied what we have already? And I'm Karen Saucier, I live on the island. I don't have a mooring there, but I walk there, I ride my bike there. But I'm just curious. I've never seen, but I don't go in the middle of the day of a Saturday. How often are those spots that are along the road there full?
So I don't have an exact number. I haven't tallied it, but every summer it does happen, especially during the first few weeks of July. July is pretty much our worst month for parking down there.
Come to that side of the room just a minute.
60 years ago, I was a teenager, but it's not that funny. Thomas, come on. The point I'm making is my wife and I go down there swimming, and we've been doing it for 30, 40 years or more. And the problems we're talking about are because the mooring fields have expanded. But that place has been used for a long time. With the additional moorings come a lot more traffic, a lot more interest, and so forth. So I don't want people to get a thought that there's been mooring there all the time, and the problem now is teenagers or other people coming because it's a popular spot. The question I have for you is this is very helpful for all of us. But I'm still not sure of the process that's happened up to this point, and I'll get to that, and what goes from here. What I hope isn't going to happen is that you've listened to the comments, you've taken good notes, and you're going to respond to those comments, and then you're going to come up with a plan that goes to the planning board. There should be an iterative process here where you have, and I don't know whether you're meeting on a monthly basis where the public can come and listen to the discussions. I don't know. I don't know, if Barney, if it's you and Will, or whether the Harbor Commission has monthly meetings, or what it is. So maybe if you can describe how you plan to go from here and what the opportunities are for public input before you get to the site plan review. You can whisper to me if you want.
I know, I try to, but there's many people here. So, again, Steve Johnson, the town engineer. So that's an excellent question. I'm glad you brought that up, sir. So again, this is just a first public meeting that we've had. I anticipate that we'll have more. There is obviously a tremendous amount of energy about this project, and I don't think a one and done public meeting is necessarily the case. I think we need to have more. So I think we can make that commitment that we will take this information and we'll move a little bit further along, and I think we'll have to schedule another one, maybe 2, maybe 3. We'll see. And before we really get to the point that we get to the planning board. But does that make sense? All right, so I'm going to go over in this side of the room. I know people have been over here waiting, so I'm coming. So I'm going to hit you first. There we go.
Right. Hey, can you bring up SK2?
Yeah, I have to stand by. I have to plug this back in. Barney's laptop died. What's that? Your laptop died.
Anyway, while they're doing that, my name is Matthew Hamilton Hopkinson. I would prefer if you call me Matt. I reside at 17 Benjamin's Way.
You want this one or the next one?
SK2?
The 2 up, please. Okay. This is my house right here. It's a private road off of Madeleine Point Road. It's named Fairmount Ave on this street, on this map, but it's Benjamin's Way. So I wanted to start by stating, maybe I don't have to at this point, but the majority of the residents in the neighborhood are opposed to the expansion of Madeleine Point project. I've talked to maybe 20 people myself. Every one of them has been against the project. I haven't met anyone in the area that is for it. And I think mostly it's because of the issues that have been brought up. What's existing now, I call that phase 1. It's been there only since 2011. And all of the issues that have come up are because of the poor execution of that project. I think we need to repair all of those things before we consider expanding anything at all. This project, as it stands, is grossly disproportionate to the other 7 public access facilities on Cousins and Littlejohn's. Littlejohn's public dock, The Wharf, Little John's Preserve, Catherine Tinker property, Camp Sosi, Sandy Point Beach, and the West Side Trail, by my count, and I could be wrong, enjoy a combined number of parking spaces of about 33. And they access thousands of feet of waterfront property. By comparison, Madeleine Point by itself enjoys an additional, what I count 33, I think I'm just counting the ones down here. Will said 43 spaces in one facility that accesses a total of 75 feet of waterfront. It accesses today from here to here. The rest of it is not town property. A little family history here as it relates to our properties in the Casco Bay area. My great-great-grandparents, Joseph and Nancy Hamilton, lived on Cousins Island in the 1800s. They were a great part of the community. You'll see the biggest stained glass window in the Cousins Island Chapel is dedicated to them. They were part of the effort to build the community house next door, and they're buried on the island. I grew up living on a property that they lived on. It's been passed down through the family. I don't own it anymore, I'm sorry to say. But my grandparents inherited all the land from about the end of Hamilton Way all the way down to where Henry Groves owned the very southern tip of the island where the power plant now sits. My dad built a log cabin on some of that land down towards the southern end of the thing. He started it when he was in high school. He continued to build it. He finished it after serving in World War II. My folks, they spent their honeymoon in there. So what happened? They wanted to build a power plant. They took the land and they tore the thing down and they built a power plant. My dad's cousin, Nancy Blanchard, owned a cute little cottage on the other side of the island, down at the end of Wharf Road. She happened to own a nice piece of peninsula there, and she built a parking lot on it, and she used to rent it out to people who wanted to go to Shipping Island. Well, she got on, and she got tired of running a business, so she closed it. What did they do? They took it from her. And she had to sue them for the fair value of that property. So I'm fortunate, I feel I'm fortunate, to have hung on to a postage stamp sized lot, piece of Cousin Island, piece of the bay, piece of Casco Bay. And, you know, that's where I want to enjoy the peace and beauty of sunsets. Now, ironically, the town has managed to lease the land that was taken from my grandfather for other people to use, for people to pile up against the side of my house. And, you know, used to be a less than 200-foot buffer. Now there's, you know, almost nothing there. It's actually less than zero buffer, and I'll explain that. The intertidal zone, if you may understand, is the area between a high water mark, generally somewhere along the top of the exposed rock, and the low tide, and mean low tide is at, you know, the edge of water at low tide. The intertidal zone in the state of Maine is owned by the landowner. The landowner owns down to the low water mark. And this is all explained fairly well in the Guide to Public Shoreline Access in Maine. And you can get a copy of that. It's located in the harbor and waterfront page on the town's website. It's very clear as what the situation is. FPL, Florida Power and Light, is a landowner. They own from here to here, plus a whole lot more. And the lease area A, as it is described in the lease, ends at the high water mark. They own the upland. They've leased out the upland, and they've stopped it at the high water mark. So they never leased the intertidal land between the high water mark and the low water mark. So I haven't seen anything from anybody that says that that's public property, public access or anything else. So you still got 75 feet of frontage, and now you want to double the parking. You want 1 foot of beach per person, I guess, per carload. But the thing is people go down there and they could not guess that that's the only water frontage because there's no indication, not anything that says, here's the end of the public facility. When you step over there, you've left the town property. And so, you know, people, they explore down the rocks and they end up on my beach. I have to, you know, I want to hang out and enjoy my beach. I don't want to be the policeman that goes out there and yells, get off my lawn every 15 minutes. You know, we need controls. We need rules. We need boundaries. We need signs. We need, I don't know what. That's up to the planners of this project. But the fact that people are on my beach the way they are, this is perhaps learned behavior. Every year, the high school holds an annual field trip where they turn the entire biology class onto my beach without so much as asking permission. They look for snails under the seaweed. They're all over my beach. And I only know that because I started working from home. When I show up, I'm at my house, and all of a sudden, all these kids are out there. So, I mean, how would anybody in town know that this is considered trespassing if they're sent there on a project accompanied by school staff? I mean, there's got to be a point here where, you know, the town has to stand up and address this problem. But this is just one example of what I mean by less than zero buffer. People trespass on the private road. As soon as they get off of the town land, they let their dogs off the leash. The dogs run down into my yard and defecate. It happens over and over again. Dogs are running loose all the time in there. Also, dogs that have been on boats, they've been cooped up for a while, they get off that boat and they run for a place to go to the bathroom. And there again, my property. People just make themselves at home in my yard. Dogs come and eat food off my picnic table. How would you like it if you were having guests over and you had a plate full of steaks there on the table and a dog jumps up and takes one? Would you feed that steak to your guests now? Or would you just throw it out and look for some hot dogs in the freezer to feed them? I mean, it's ridiculous. It really is. And people sit on my porch swing 5 feet from my living room window. You look out your window, you got your cup of coffee in your hand, and it's like, what are they doing? It's incredible. They're just all over the place. And I blame that parking space. And when you double it, I'm going to have twice as many of these people all over. They're going to be in the house asking to use a bathroom. So, changing the subject now that you all feel sorry for me, I see 2 major design flaws with the project as presented. I know this is just preliminary, but they need to be looked at now. The first is it's the runoff from the loading area, right in here. I call it the loading area, whatever you call it. This is proposed to be paved from here on down. Currently, they talked about the sediment that building up because the road, you know, it's gravel. And my neighbor was concerned about as well, which is, I don't know, in this area somewhere, I don't know exactly. And it was explained to him that once it's paved, it'll be better because then anything that's in the road will wash right past more easily and be cleaned out of there. The thing with that is the same half-eaten sandwiches, empty coffee cups, dog feces, everything else is going to flush right down that pavement, right over the bank and into the beach that everyone wants to sit in. It doesn't seem like a real well-thought-out plan. So, by the way, I'm a registered professional engineer, so I kind of know about these things. There's a 75-foot buffer zone setback from the shoreline that the rest of us have to respect. In special situations, you can have a 50-foot setback. This plan has a 30-foot setback. I don't know where that came from. I don't know how that can be implemented. My suggestion is, since you know that what's there now, which is those green pavers, used to be planted with grass, are no longer planted with grass. They're up under a foot of gravel. Use that area. Pull the hammerhead back 20 feet. Pull it back to the 50-foot buffer. Put in a sedimentation basin, a shallow sedimentation basin. It's the perfect spot for people coming down to pile their duffel for their boats, their kayaks, all the gear that goes with kayaks. You know, the stuff that you take off the roof of your car and you want to set it someplace. Right now, there's no place to set anything there. Use it for that. Even put a picnic table in there. It's not going to be full of water on a sunny day. It's going to have water in it during a rainstorm. And keep all that stuff out of the beach area. Be much cleaner.
So we're coming up on a couple minutes. Do you think we can wrap it up real quick? I know there are other folks
Yes.
that have questions.
Yes. The other issue is the project of accessibility for people with disabilities. Between the parking lot, which has 2 ADA accessible parking spaces, and the facility that everyone wants to use, there's this narrow, steep dirt road. It's wide enough for one car. Everybody that goes down here, they have to turn around and come back after they're unloaded, and they have to walk down that thing. So the thing is full of pedestrians and it's full of cars. And there is no place to queue, which means to pull over and wait for one of these things to open up. There's nowhere between here and there to stop and be out of the way while you're waiting. It's just irresponsible to think that that's going to work out. So in summary, I think that the proposal is poorly thought out, and efforts to solve the access problem should start with defining the extent of the public facility and correcting the behavior of visitors. The simplest solution would be for the harbor master to identify the number of spaces needed for the mooring holders and set those aside. In keeping with the parking limits in all other facilities on the 2 islands, 10 general public spaces would provide far more access than any other similar places on Cousins and Little John's. The notion of solving the problem by doubling the size of it it's just not going to work. Thank you.
Can you send your notes to me so I can write it? Send your notes to me. Oh, okay, thank you. All right. Thank you very much. I know there's folks over here. I know we're running a little late, but we'll get around to everybody.
I'll keep it brief. Ed Gawley, Lady Slipper Lane out on Cousins Island. I want to thank the committee for allowing this opportunity to provide feedback. I want to thank a neighbor of mine that put a letter in my mailbox to remind me of today's meeting. That got me here and gave me the power to want to show up. And when I look at this, I think about the character of this town. And I think about the things that we've lost. You know, we had Andy's on Main Street, and we had Goff's on Main Street, and we had the Down East motel and that restaurant that's now the Patriot Insurance. And I think about Madeleine Point, and I think we could lose what we love about this town and the spirit and the character of this town. And I'm really concerned. I've negotiated a ton of things in my life, and when I hear creative negotiating, it makes me really nervous because I don't know what that means. And I can imagine, because I've been a part of some of those, you know, negotiating with other people on some of these deals. And, you know, I commend that they're trying to do the right thing, but the extent of the number of spaces that they're suggesting that they put in and negotiating with somebody about property lines and those type of boundaries, I think this is good for today, but I think what's going to happen is we're going to drive more volume to our island. We've seen a ton of volume as it is. And then what are we going to do? When we max out that parking lot, are we going to try to expand somewhere else? Are we going to try to do something different? So it's concerning to me. I know we can't not do anything. I think we have to address what we have, but I suggest we try to work within the footprint that we have now, and we try to enforce some rules within the footprint we have now, and then we expand it later.
I'm Pat Kelsey, 30 Mooring Lane, right behind everything that's being talked about. And what I want to know is the size of that parking lot that's going in. You know what I'm talking about, Will. It comes pretty much up to where I live.
Yep.
And I know you mentioned before that the area in there is all belong to Florida Power and Light, but no, it doesn't. I'm right in the middle of it, and Florida Power and Light is right around me, but it looks like now all these cars are moving right up to my boundary, and I just don't understand it. There's not enough room. You talked about the beach. It's not a beach. Popham Beach is a beach. Now, all those kids are not going to sit on the stones. They may sit on the rock once in a while, but they're going to go out on those docks. And the more parking places you have for them, the more they're going to come. Build it and they shall come. And I feel like I'm saying, not in my backyard. And that's not really true. My backyard isn't big enough. Your backyard on Madeleine Point is not big enough to go and do all this. The cars start to come down. We can't, and I know they have parking places. They're going to park anywhere they want. They're going to park right across from the driveway. We've got private lanes, all of these, but they're still going to come there and you can't get out. It just, I think everybody else has covered most of what I wanted to say, but it just makes me very, very nervous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Penny Bates. I've lived on Madeleine since 1962. I've been swimming down there since I was 2 days old. That road was like, you see one of these little country roads with a hilltop like in the middle of it. And it was pretty much like that until around 1990. When I was down there swimming, it was just the swimmers, a couple of fishermen, and the people who lived down there who had a mooring. The island was divided into 3 parts. There was the association, which stopped at Jeff England's place, and then stops at Sea Meadow. From there on, people went to Sandy Point. From Jeff's place down, we went down to Madeleine Point Road. We all got along really fine. But you couldn't use the association property unless you were part of the association. And then in the 90s, it's, more people, more cousins, everybody else started coming down. More people in Yarmouth recognized that, hey, the beach is gone at Sandy Point. We can come down here and use the rocks. No problem. Because when it's low tide, you cannot use that area at all because you're ankle deep and there is the float. And it's a mess. And as far, I agree with Matt there. As far as the erosion and everything there, it was fine because where the kayaks are, the Weymouths used to live. They had a garden there. This was all grasses, bluegrass, clover, Indian paintbrush. We did not have any erosion. Even when we had a bad rainstorm, it might go a little bit here and they put some rocks in. That was fine. There's been terrific erosion since this crap got put in. Last year, I went down the road, and when you go to the rock, this much dirt, and that little path was gone. It was all over the rock. There's no grass there. First thing they did is they put those pavers in, put some grass on it. First rainstorm, gone, and they never did anything else, except build those steps there. Just before the pandemic, I was down there swimming, doing the backstroke, coming back, and my hand came up, and I said, what the heck? I turned around. We were having a little sun shower. Water was pouring down those granite steps, brown as could be, right into the water. It was high tide. Coming down the rock, just like that. There's no grasses there. You planted rugarosa there, which is an invasive species, and it didn't do any good. And it's just been going downhill, and now you want to increase this? It's just going to get worse and worse. And for the most part, the swimmers are pretty good. They stay in here. They're just down there to get cooled off. They're going back and forth near the rock. They go down that way. They try to avoid the boats, even the dinghies that are coming back, and they're not looking to see if there's anybody in the water. Dinghies go all the way around that little float. I've seen boats come underneath that wharf and go trying to get into a spot. I've seen, unfortunately, a couple of fishermen. They come up here and launch right onto the boat. Onto the shoreline. Excuse me. And a couple of years ago, we had somebody come down with a one-person sailboat. They brought it down there, and they were practicing. 17-year-old with his dad were practicing in the cove with the swimmers. They could care less. Most of the problems have been with the boaters, and you just want to increase it. And the moorings are getting closer and closer. Low tide, you can walk to those boats, and you're not even waist deep. And there's really no place for anyone to swim there, so they have to go to Sandy Point. And you just want to bring more people in, and where are you going to put them? Where are you going to put those boats? Further down onto those front of those cabins, closer to the rock, over to where Tansen lives? It's just going to make this whole situation worse. And we got drag racing and everything else on the road now at night. I saw a car almost get smacked because they suddenly realized, oh, wait a minute, there's a tree stump there that fell from the tree last year. And he swerved and almost hit the car he was racing. They went down the road. They came back with 3 more buddies, 3 more cars. This was at 9 o'clock at night. And it's right up until midnight. You got the cars coming back and forth to check out, see if Joe Blow is down there or Susie Q is there. We've had cars go down with the kids literally sitting on the windshield or on the windsill, jammed, 12 people I counted one time. That was like at 8 o'clock at night when I was walking my dog. They come running right down Madeleine. They don't care. They're screaming, they're singing, and everything else. And a friend told me about, evidently there was quite a risque group that came up one night, the guys. So we don't need this kind of crap. I've seen them stop suddenly, go out to the side of the road behind the watershed building or into the parking lot. And you know what they're doing, because why are they behind the building? They don't bother to go down to the potty.
Thank you.
So it's badly thought out.
Just one comment while Steve's finding the other. What about a gate? Winslow Park in Freeport has a gate. Broad Cove in Cumberland has a gate. Would a gate?
Meanwhile, the local people are just like, what the heck? I just bought this property 3 years ago. No one told me you were going to do this. And now I'm looking at a place that's already, I was kind of like, okay, I guess that's fine. But now it's going to change big time if you guys do want to do this.
What?
I feel like anybody's got to be that black bag for me.
What I'm hearing,
Steve, you want to?
what?
Go ahead.
Did you want to respond? What I'm hearing a lot here is postage stamp and a gem. Postage stamp space and a gem of a spot. I'm Kathy Mills. I live in the west end of Yarmouth, which is not a Tony address. It is in Portland, but not in Yarmouth, apparently. I've been swimming at Madeleine Point for many years. Not all the swimmers at Madeleine Point are teenagers, although we may look like them. There is a beach at Madeleine Point. There is a beach. There are mothers and kids down there that enjoy the time. There are people of all ages that swim down there from the beach. There's a scale issue here. There's a scale issue here. This is a small spot, and it feels like we're shoehorning something in. And I'm also not clear on what was really driving this to begin with. What were the goals of this project? I haven't heard anything about a long list of, and I love boaters and boat owners. Please don't mistake me. I'm a swimmer who loves boats, and I avoid them when I'm down there, and they try to avoid me, and I wave to make sure I'm out of their way. But
from the folks that I've talked to on the commission and elsewhere, one of the big driving issues here is more moorings. And all I could hear in my head driving down here was Joni Mitchell's tune, Pave Paradise and Put Up a Parking Lot. And I'm not talking about the parking lot for cars. Moorings are parking spaces for boats. And we all have our recreational needs and wants and desires. I get that. But I really, when I hear, it wasn't just 43 spaces, somebody mentioned 85 parking spaces total, and I thought to myself, how many are down at the Bayview Town Landing? You know, there's not that many there. Somebody pointed out that the other spaces in Yarmouth, other landing places in Yarmouth don't have that much. There's really a scale issue here, and I really think people need to go back to the drawing board. I really do. If people are trying to reconcile boaters with swimmers, that can be dealt with, but I don't think that's really, I think that's one issue, and I think the elephant in the living room actually is many more moorings wanted and needed in Yarmouth, and this is the only place people can think of to put them, and no one has stated that during this meeting that I've heard yet. So I'd like some clarity on that. And in terms of swimmers and boaters down there, there's a sign actually which says that swimmers must give way to boaters, just so you know. And I understand that when I'm swimming there. I don't really, I mean, I see it and I understand it, you know, intellectually, but I'm like, jeepers, when you cross the street, you have a pedestrian has a right of way. So that's kind of interesting. But I guess boaters prevail there. So I even, you know, so we're adding a little bit of property from FPL. We've got a little property here. This is a postage stamp place with a few private residences and a small beach, and a pier was created for a few moorings. And this is, even if it's gradual, it's like, oh, a few more moorings, and you know, a ton more parking spaces now, a few more moorings, oh, and then more moorings and more moorings. People who move to Yarmouth have to decide what they want. And please don't put a swimming pier off of the rock. That spot is one of the most beautiful places to see the sunset in town. You know, what do we go down there to look at? Boats and moorings, or to look at what nature has to offer, which is part of why many of us moved to Yarmouth.
Quick question on design. If you just added more dock space, does that trigger you changing the ramp?
No.
Okay, so you could add more dock space for more dinghies and kayaks and swimming and all that good stuff, and nothing else would have to change?
You can technically, yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. I was wondering about that because listening to the room, if we can just expand dock space and then you can implement rules with the town council, because this is the first step, then you go to the town council. We added room, but we didn't add parking.
Yep.
And then you could come up with safety measures, because I think a lot of boat folks are like, it's dangerous.
Correct.
And that's my concern is safety. That's it.
No, thank you. Yes.
What is the goal for this facility? What's the long-term goal? No one has talked about that. What is the long-term goal?
So the goal is to, well, do you want to speak to a piece of this?
It's, I think
Here,
it's
Barney, use a
simply saying
microphone.
It would be, provide safe public access to the water.
How many, do we want to expand boat moorings incrementally over time?
So to answer your boat mooring question, if you increase parking, yes, there is an opportunity to increase moorings. Is that the best spot in Yarmouth to increase moorings? Yes, it is. I will own that all day long. But it will be decided by the group whether we expand on anything. We're not going to expand on moorings if we don't have parking, but we're not going to necessarily expand on moorings just because we have parking if the parking is being used by kayakers, swimmers, beachgoers, all these other uses. So the problem is all the parking right now is dictated, our moorings are dictated by the current parking.
So you're not planning to increase moorings until you first increase parking? I find that interesting.
Correct. We're not going to increase moorings until we increase parking.
Really?
Correct. At Madeleine Point, we're maxed out on what the design capability was and what we built it for currently. What do you mean?
Well, so you increase the parking, how long will you wait before you? There's a tremendous amount of pressure for more moorings.
There are, but doesn't mean we have to issue them.
So we have another gentleman that's been waiting here. Let's do the mic so we can all get through here. We got a lot of people that want to talk. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Trevor Putnaki. I live at 89 Cousins Street. We are the first house on Cousins Island. I apologize for coming late. I was caught up in work. I heard when I came in here that there was a traffic study that was conducted in the middle of September. I would just really urge another traffic study in peak season. As the first house on Cousins Island, we see a lot of cars go by. I have a 5- and 6-year-old that we do not let play in the front of our house because we see teenagers often, frankly, driving 60 miles an hour down the road. I've witnessed those drag races as well. And I think you would find a much different traffic picture between Memorial Day and Labor Day than you would see in the middle of September after Labor Day. So I'm not sure we can totally rely on the results of that study. I would also say just, being a mooring holder, I waited 3 years patiently to get a mooring. I think that was totally fair. I don't see a need for issuing all these other moorings that quickly, and I have also never not been able to get a parking spot down there. Maybe I've seen that lot full on like 4th of July weekend and some holiday weekends, but it seems extremely excessive for a problem that really only exists during absolute peak usage of the facility. So thank you.
I'm coming up front. Now, just to answer that question about traffic, so that is part of the planning board process, so that would be addressed as part of that process. So I know this lady was up front. I'm coming. Excuse me. Thank you.
So just while we're talking about parking and the full spots that are there, we've lived at 111, which is just to the right of the dock, for 2 years, 3 years, and we've never seen it full. I mean, if it's full on July 4th, maybe I just wasn't out that day, but we walk almost daily up and down the road, and I just never see it full. So I've been kind of confused from the beginning as to why, if we're talking about existing issue and taking care of that, why parking is even a necessity? Why a 34-car parking lot?
Just to follow up on that, as far as the moorings go, I love the spot. We've been there 3 years, and I go down regularly and count the number of boats. And I know there's 100 moorings available now, approximately. I've never counted more than 67 boats out on the field out there. So I don't know if there's a bunch of mooring holders who aren't using there. Could that be part of the process to assess who is and isn't using the mooring? And if you haven't used it in 3 years, maybe you need to give that up.
Well, that's why the parking is a third or a fourth of the. It's a quarter. It's a quarter. So that's why the parking is so much smaller than the amount of moorings, because most likely not all the moorings will be either out or they won't be used all at the same time. So some people have multiple moorings. They might go to their summer house, take their boat out for a month or so, or whatever have you. They might only put their boat in for a small period of time. So, I mean, that's why the moorings necessarily aren't always all used, but you are required to use it once every other year. So it's not necessarily required to use it every year.
I'm Donna Felker. I grew up in town. I've lived on the island for over 40 years. I have 3 questions and then a concern. I have a question about the runoff from the paved area. When you see houses wanting to be built or businesses want to be built, they have to provide a solution to the runoff of paved areas. I would like to know how long the agreements are with CMP. And if we're going to have rules, who's going to monitor the rules? Neighbors are not going to monitor neighbors. So that's going to mean increased staff if you're going to monitor the rules. Now my concern. Put this all aside. I'm not even going to talk about Madeleine Point. I'm going to talk about getting to Madeleine Point. When I first moved out on the island, they put in a safety way that now you call a sidewalk. Is it safe? No. Are there potholes? Yes. Are there branches and bushes growing over the sidewalk? Yes. Are there roots growing up on the sidewalk? Yes. Are there hills on the sidewalk? Yes. Now, I have spoken in front of the town council a couple of times years ago about the safety for people older trying to use that sidewalk. People in wheelchairs, people with walkers, people with canes. Guess what? I'm there now. So now I'm talking about me. That sidewalk has not been touched except for filling potholes since it was put in as a safety way. Before you try to put in parking, when we have traffic from CMP, we have traffic from Chesapeake Island, and now you want to put traffic for additional parking down to Madeleine Point, you best be making a safe sidewalk.
Hi, my name is Jeff. I've lived on Cousins Island since 1956. I think I might have probably everyone beat here. But beyond that, the point I was saying is parking. I think that in the peak of the summer, Chesapeake Island people do park down there. So if you expand it to 85, you're going to have 50% more Chesapeake Islanders. And I don't ever see that monitored except for overnight. I can tell you that my daughter came down with my granddaughter one day, and what happened was she had the car seat in her car, so we jumped in her car. So I went down and parked up above properly. We got a ticket. But a lot of times, this stuff, people that are going day trips to Chesapeake, and I don't think that was the intention of that area. Thank you.
You are correct, just to address that a little bit. And that's why about 4 or 5 years ago, we did change the parking, which was open-ended to resident only. And then we started enforcing that pretty heavily, in all honesty. We write a fair amount of tickets. It's the number 1 location for tickets in town by the hundreds. So just for the record, like we write a lot of tickets down there. It has changed a lot from a few years back as far as what we've seen with compliancy, but I'm not going to argue that people don't still use it at all.
How many double and triple and quadruple offenders that don't care? They pay the ticket or don't even bother.
That's a great question. I don't have an answer for.
So this lady has the mic, folks. If she can, go ahead, please.
I live on Hamilton Way, which is the street next to Madeleine Point, and I just want to point out that the Madeleine Point corner where it meets Cousins is very precarious, particularly with the traffic going the other way too. We often walk at dusk, and traffic speeds going in, but those teenagers, and I have 3 young adults, so no diss there at all, but they are flying out of there. So that it would be something that definitely needs to be addressed. Additionally, there is so much more traffic coming in, and particularly with that being an area that we have a lot of cyclists, as they're coming across the bridge, it is holding traffic up. I counted 8 cars in front of me the other day being gracious to let the cyclists go through. So I think that's, just as we're looking at traffic, something that needs to be addressed too or looked at.
Thank you.
Thank you. This gentleman over here, I know. I'll get it right here. Excuse me. Thank you. No, excuse me, Jensen.
I'm Michael Beedix. I've been on Cousins Island since 1983. I live on Sandy Point Road. I share the same concern about intent. 2 years ago, we were able to successfully stop the town from paving parts of Tinker Field and basically raping what is a natural area. I don't understand this need for improvement or beautification of a beautiful place already. It just seems like the intent is I don't understand the intent. Maybe the town's got too much money, they don't know what to do with it, but I'm a little sorry to see this kind of what we call improvement. This is not improvement. This is making things worse.
Hi, I'm Nancy Hubbard, Matt's wife. We're right next to the Madeleine Point dock. Matt's not exaggerating. I was actually in my house. He had the car, he went into town, and I heard voices. I looked out my window, and there were people on my swing. That's not the first time that's happened. They're always on the beach. And for the neighborhood, we don't want to be those people. We don't want a police. We want people to enjoy the spot. We enjoy the spot. We enjoy seeing other people enjoy the spot. It's the beautifulest sunset you've ever seen. We do. We love it. But as Matt stated early in what he spoke about, the original plan was poorly implemented. The rules need to be made so that they can be enforced to the original plan. There needs to be a dusk to dawn. There needs to be a dog leash law. I cannot tell you how many dogs poop in my yard. They climb over my embankment, causing erosion on my waterfront property. We all know what that means. That's horrible for a waterfront owner. But the killer was the high school biology class. I mean, seriously. You look out your window, you see kids on the beach. They're just having fun, no big deal. If they're over there messing around with my rowboat and my outhaul, I will say, please, this is private property. Don't mess around with my rowboat. Don't mess around with my outhaul. My name's Nancy Jane. Nancy Jane is my rowboat. You've all seen it. It's very pretty. But I don't understand why Will has repeated many times here tonight and in another meeting I had with him of why the facility needs to be built before the rules can be put into place. There is a facility already built. It was started in 2008, and the rules were never put in place. They were refused. We need to group up and speak out because these teenagers are there past midnight, screaming, squealing, skinny dipping, drinking, laughing, shouting, music, and it's every night in the summer. I have a bonfire, I cook hot dogs, marshmallows, sit by the bay, watch the sunset, and then listen to that all night long. Loud sex, too. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. These kids, they deserve to have fun. They deserve to have a teenager. I was a teenager, too, and boy, did I raise a lot of hell. But there comes a point where when you have a beautiful spot, a postage stamp gem, that in making it larger is just going to bring more problems. So let's get the problems under control that are there before we start moving forward to more. Thank you.
Thank you. I do live on Cousins Island. I'm not on the water. But I think I learned a lot tonight, which is why I came. A lot of stories about the history here. Very interesting. There's a few things I did hear, though. I'm an engineer, too. There's a few things wrong with that facility right now. I'm going to leave all that parking and rules to somebody else. That's not me. I'm an engineer. But I think the ability to get handicapped people down there is a big deal. And if you look at Yarmouth, you can't get to the water. You can't. There's no place to get to the water. Now you can go down the town landing, but that's not out in the ocean. That's on a little river. I think that's an important feature. And so, if hopefully you don't throw out the, what's that thing? Throw out the baby with the bathwater, whatever that thing is. Don't throw out all the good things because of some of the other issues. The erosion is a big deal. I think that's got to be taken care of. I hear that. I'm sure it's going to be part of Barney's thing to deal with that because he has to deal with it. That's a big deal. And then the other one, which I don't have the feel that some of you guys do, this separation of boaters and swimmers how that's handled, whether it's rules, whatever, that's a big deal too. It doesn't sound like it's handled correctly now. I think that needs to be taken care of too. So I think there are some technical things that really should be taken care of in this project. And then you have your other things, which are, there's obviously some heated debates about the other piece of it, but I wouldn't want to throw the whole project out because of these issues I think technically are important. Thank you.
So folks, we're coming up on 8 o'clock here. I know this lady right here has a question, so I think if we can maybe wrap up questions. We've heard a lot, so.
Hi, Ann Thayer. I live on Little John, and I just have a question about funding. I have a question about funding. How is this project going to be funding, and what's the effect going to be on existing mooring holders?
So the funding, as of right now, we have no funding. It's just a concept. It would have to be approved by town council and the council. No, there's no money has been. No, that's incorrect. That might be a typo. I don't. We have no money.
So currently, this project hasn't been forward to final design and construction funding. That is, I can't recall exactly what has been estimated for the whole piece.
634
in that range. So it's a pretty significant initial estimate. So
634,000 was the estimated of this as drawn.
As drawn. So
potential.
Generally, just to give us a sense of what we thought this might be financially. So again, that funding is not in hand. We have been given funding by council to move to this level and to get this concept plan, but the council has not authorized us to move further than where we are to get a concept and bring public input. So again, there's going to be a ton of more discussion. There's going to be some more work involved, taking all these comments that we've had today and seeing what we can do and trying to address them. So I know there are a couple more people want to have questions here, talk. Small one? All right. Okay. Oh, forgive me.
So the impact on the mooring field? Correct.
So that's why I'm concerned about how the funding is going to impact existing mooring holders.
So we did raise the fees in the past, partially. So the fees for a resident is $200 for a mooring, to have a mooring permit. If you're a senior resident, it's $100. For a non-resident, it's $300.
What was it last year?
It was the same last year, even prior.
Before the last rise,
It was $155 for residents prior, and it was $105 for seniors, and it was $250 for non-residents. So we lowered the senior rate down $5, but we raised the other ones up $45.
This gentleman hasn't spoken. Next. Okay.
Thank you, Dan O'Halloran. I live on the end of Benjamin's Way. A lot of things I was going to say have been said tonight. One of my biggest concerns, as others have brought up, is safety. And it's not only safety for the swimmers, it's the pedestrians, it's drivers on Madeleine Point Road, and for where I am, it's safety from boaters who are not regulated. They're coming in and out of the mooring field, full tilt. I can't even keep my boat on the end of my dock anymore because of the waves. I have boats come between my mooring and my dock at high rate of speed. Swimming is dangerous. So it's safety. And, Will does a great job, but he doesn't have a big staff, okay? When we talk about rules and regulations, you need enforcement. Harbor Master isn't Madeleine Point, okay? It's a big job. I really would think you would need, if this ever went through, someone down there full-time monitoring what's going on. And I know as neighbors, we see stuff, we don't call the police, we don't cause issues, but I think we have to start documenting or making calls every single night of the week so you people actually know what's going on down there. So safety, for me, comes in a lot of perspectives. Again, pedestrian safety, swimmer safety, boater safety. And we need enforcement to do that. And again, that, what does that do to the budget and an ongoing expense? When we're talking $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 for 40 parking places, it's a lot of money.
Just quickly, nobody has spoken about commercial fishing off the dock. I mean, I'm a strong supporter of the working waterfront, and prices are going up every year, and more commercial fishermen are getting squeezed out. I know there's a limited number of fishing berths, or whatever you want to call them, at this facility. I think that they should be expanded, and I think that there should be special privileges for commercial fishing operations to get their moorings, get them moved up on the list. I like to see the commercial fishermen that type of activity going on every day. 5 o'clock in the morning, they're there thrumming along and pulling up to the dock, and it just feels like Maine to me. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Steve, I've got one question to ask.
Sure, please, you go. So just before we go, Barney, so we're getting a little bit closer on time, but I think after we finish with Barney and wrap up, I think staff will hang around for a little while. Anyway, we can talk with folks individually too. So go ahead, Barney.
Yeah, so while we've got everybody in the room that came tonight, and I really appreciate you coming. I think the feedback has been great. On the subject of safety, I'd just like to understand, when you're swimming, how far out do you swim?
There's a Wednesday morning club. I'm down there 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock every morning. There's a Wednesday, there's a bunch of girls, they swim. You're gonna be careful.
Right out into the mooring field? Yeah. So it's really not possible to segregate the swimmers from the boaters? Okay. All right.
And they go along the shore, back and forth along the shore. And they might even climb out on a private person's dock and then walk back down the street.
Gotcha.
That happens a lot.
The major safety concern is right off the dock. A lot of kids that jump in where boaters can't react fast enough. They're supposed to, but it's hard.
Yeah.
That's the real crux.
Okay.
Great. Great. So. Thank you. Okay, so we have had a lot of great information here. So I think we've been furiously taking notes. I know I have at least 3 pages minimum. And so I think next steps, we're going to circle up. We're going to address those questions. And I think we're going to be getting back to you, I think, in another time frame. I don't have a schedule for you now, but I think that we will be digesting this, and I think you'll see more communication on this project coming up. All right? Don't have a schedule. But again, thank you very much. One last thing before you leave, before my planner pounds me when I get out of the parking lot, you have lots of great things, and part of the comprehensive plan involves what you were passionate about here today. So I urge all of you to contact Aaron Zwerko and be involved and engaged in our comprehensive plan that's currently under development. All right? Thank you very much.
Make sure everybody signs in.
And make sure you sign in too. Thank you, Barney.